How's it going, folks? I'm Matthew, this is Lemora's Cards, and today we're going over the Top Deck Gaming Expo cEDH 8K. This is a big event that took place this past weekend that was apparently the largest cash prize and largest attendance cEDH event in North America. Eric and I were both at this event. It was really awesome, and we're going to have a podcast episode coming out this week where we talk about the event, our sort of experience in the meta, and just how it was and, you know, how smooth and awesome it was. But this video is not going to go over the boots on the ground experience at the event. Today, we're breaking down the top 16 decks, what the meta looked like there, and what decks came out on top. Let me know down below, which of these decks were your favorite? What were you hoping was going to win? What do you think of the current cEDH meta? Also, a huge thanks to my patrons over on Patreon. Go over there, get access to early videos, merch discounts. We're also going to be adding in patron submitted questions to the podcast. We'll go over your submitted questions as well as patron submitted decks to look at during these top 16 breakdowns, where we'll take a look at a patron's deck and tell you what we think about it. Other than that, let's hop into it. Looking to run a great cEDH event? Having hosted over 100 successful tournaments, Eminence Gaming has your back with Command Tower. With its intuitive tournament manager dashboard, you can handle everything from deck list submission to player management in just a few clicks. Then, all players need to do is scan a generated QR code to have access to your full tournament bracket. Put your players first with seamless pairing software and real-time access to standings. Take the guesswork out of tournaments. Give Command Tower a try for your next event. All right, so we're here on EDH Top 16. Nifty feature this site has. We're going to click on this tournament, and then you'll see this blue button at the top, meta breakdown. We're going to click on that, and then we're going to sort by entries because that makes more sense than how it normally sorts it. And what this does is it shows you the most popular decks at the event and how they did. So, as you can see, and probably expected, Blue Farm was the most popular deck and also did pretty well, 17% conversion rate. 4 top 16s out of the 23 entries. Then we had Kinnan and Rograkh tied for number 2, both at 14 entries, 14%, like complete exact same stats for this. I've been saying Kinnan is just, you know, Simic Rograkh. Nobody believed me. So these are kind of about what you expect. No deck has a jarringly high conversion rate or low conversion rate of these until we get to cEDH, which has 12 decks, just slightly less than Rog and Kinnan, but 0 conversion rate. No top 16s made for cEDH. I'm not really sure what led to that to be the case. Usually 1 or 2 sneaks through into top 16. It's been a really high performing list. I'll be interested. Maybe when we break down the top 16 decks, it'll be more clear. But I do know cEDH of these decks probably has the slower plan typically and has to assemble more things than these decks which can kind of jam out wins and also just develop insanely quickly. Again, we see the same for Tivit, which doesn't usually have that same weakness, but we have talked about how some of the Tivit lists have leaned slower. I guess we won't get to see because we won't get to be taking a look at any of the Tivit lists. I'm not sure if that was the case here too, but yeah, Tivit struggling. Najeela did have a top 16 for an 11% conversion rate, still kind of low for Najeela. Nothing from Atraxa. Niv-Mizzet got 1 in there for 6. Kenrith 0-5, no conversions. And then we had TNT actually make a conversion. Pretty rare nowadays that we actually get to say that, but yeah, Tymna Thrasios got there. 1 Talion. 1 Dargo Tymna. Lots of Dargos at this event. It was something really interesting to see. There were multiple Dargo Tymnas, Dargo Thrasios. I played against all of those and a Dargo Tevish. For whatever reason, just seemed like Dargo was all over the place. You can scroll through and see the rest of the decks. It's mostly a bunch of 0-2, 0-3s, and then a couple 1-ofs that made it into the top 16. I definitely recommend, especially if I don't do a breakdown of a tournament, use this page to get an idea of what the whole event looked like, and it can kind of sum up a lot of what went down pretty easily. But now we're gonna go to the top 16 deck list. All right, first up, of course, we have cEDH by Cavemen, which is Tymna Kraum. This list, we do see the Saros in it. That's an iffy slot sometimes. Archivist of Ogma, which I believe made its way into a couple of the top 16 Blue Farm lists. We'll see later, but I think it did. Gilded Drake, which has become less of a staple in Blue Farm. But interesting to see. Of course, these are all staples. Lothos, pretty much a staple at this point. Bowmaster, of course. Image and Metamorph. This is something I talked about at Mox Masters Breakdown. These are just here to stay in most decks. They want to copy Dockside, so they want to copy Bowmasters. I talked this weekend about the litmus test of if your Blue Farm deck list was actually grindy, was if Talion was in it. And so I guess here we are. I guess this is a grindy Blue Farm deck list. That slot still not submitted as 100%. blue farm staple, but we do see it in the decks that are trying to go for the long game and have that one extra piece of both pressure on your opponent's life total and of course card advantage. Nothing too crazy in the sorcery slot. We do see the one wheel. That's pretty typical in blue farm right now. Some of them still go like wheel windfall, some go wheel time twister. They both have upsides and downsides, but typically we see the one wheel. In the instant slot, we do have mana drain, which is pretty notable. You don't typically see the 2 mana counterspell show up in a deck with this high of card quality. Again, this can help you do things like, you know, if your plan is to hold up mana, this can make casting your Kraum or your Ad Nauseam or just whatever you want to do on your next turn. Your One Ring maybe, which this deck is also on, so going with both of the 4 mana card advantage engines. So this can help both be a really nice piece of interaction that hits everything, and also of course mana accelerant. Not a card we usually see in blue farm, so it is interesting to see that here. I guess it does kind of give credence to what I was talking about with this being a grindier list that has more high mana payoffs that it's looking to enable with mana drain. Here at artifacts, couple rocks, Wishclaw, One Ring, pretty standard. The One Ring, again, not a 100% staple. We do see it in the grindier list. There have been talks of some people wanting to do One Ring, Talion, and then cut Nas, but here they went with all of it. I don't think you need to cut Nas because you were never really a great main phase Nas deck anyway, unless you have like a million mana, Dockside into Nas, that kind of thing. If you're instepping the Nas, it really doesn't matter that much that you're going to be hitting like 1 or 2 4-drops or Force of Will, Mind Break Trap, whatever. Blind Obedience, the main thing that sticks out here in the enchantment slot. Good piece of anti-Dockside tech, just slows down your opponents if you get it. Notable thing it does in this list versus lists like Tivit, it allows you to get in with your Tymna attackers, which is usually more necessary here than Tivit. Tivit is usually the only creature you feel like you must hit opponents with, and that one's usually pretty easy because it's a 6/6 in the air with a ward 3. But the Blind Obedience making it so that people can't develop easy Tymna attackers like a lot of the 3/3s that you might see in the format, or Tymna blockers rather, makes that a lot easier for you to get in the early game while also just slowing down their development. Nothing too crazy in the mana base, and I will point out the lack of Cavern of Souls, but that is about it. Also Tarnished Citadel, so they're going all in on one of the mana, or they're color fixing rather. Kind of typical blue farm list. Blue farm has about like 5 to 10 at a stretch, probably like more like 5 flex slots that you might see. And we'll see how some of the lists differ from this. Overall, this is nothing too wild though. Next up, we have, I guess we still haven't seen Thrasios Bruce in a while, but we have Akiri Thrasios. This is one I like trying out, and it's pretty nice because, especially as we'll see here, there's no Seedborn Muse, which is pretty much all that Bruce was there for. And so if you play with Akiri, one, you get a pretty nice attacker / blocker, depending on your board state. And then you also get a much better Mox Amber list, and you're able to develop your Fierce and Swats and things like that without thinking about having to have Thrasios colors, which makes running cards like Ragavan more easy because you can fetch for your mana base, developing towards like, oh, I want to do turn 1 Ragavan, turn 2 Drannith, and not have to worry about, well, I also need to slam Thrasios, especially if your game plan isn't going to be super grindy built around Thrasios, which I don't think this deck list is based on what we've seen. Also, super hot notable inclusion that you probably already noticed, Minskimbu, Timeless Heroes. If you haven't played against this card, it's a freaking house. It is so much value. It affects the board immediately, pressures life totals immediately. Super insane card. Just hits the board, makes a 4/4. Trample and haste, slam into somebody. Next turn, sack it, deal 4, draw 4. Really crazy card. Really cool value engine that just does a lot on its own. You might know these colors for Dawnwaker, but this list definitely slants more proactive. So we have Tinderwall, Ragavan, which is a card the Dawnwaker list weren't really doing. Again, there's no Seedborn Muse. We're not going all in on that Thrasios plan. We still, of course, have cards to combo with Thrasios, like Emil and Dockside, because that's why you'd want to run Thrasios in your command zone if you're not going to be doing the card advantage, the slow green Nas kind of thing. So a relatively slim creature amount, not an insane amount, especially considering 2 of these aren't really creature, or 3 of these really aren't creatures. But then we also have Orryock Salvagers. So this is the Bomberman combo. This is here. Again, this is more of a proactive slant on these colors. When we get to it, we'll show that LED Underworld Breach is in here. And LED also combos with Orryock Salvagers. You crack for 3 white, use your Orryock Salvagers, return your LED to hand, cast it, crack white, keep doing that, net infinite white, net infinite of every color eventually, and then you can win with Thrasios. And it lines up, of course, really well with Breach too, because you can eventually get to where you have Breach through Thrasios, and then you can just start doing that instead, however you want to win, really. Lets you do a post-combat infinite mana win, which again, you can do because this deck, spoiler alert, is on Breach, which means that you're ability to win is much easier than it was with the dedicated, just like Dawnwaker decks that were all in on Finale of Devastation. Is pretty much their only win con. Sorceries, again, Rite of Flame, Gamble. This is a proactive slant deck, but we still have the Wargate, which is a card that was mostly only played in those sort of Dawnwaker lists, but it's still here as a way to tutor out any of these creatures. You can go grab a Dockside, you can grab anything. Your opponents don't get to know what you're getting, you just get it and it goes straight into play. So you can go grab Dockside, you can grab Grand Abolisher, Ranger Captain, one of these tutor effects, a clone, a meal. You can grab its permanent card, so you could grab, I guess, a land if you were desperate. But you could also just throw in Underworld Breach straight into play. Especially if they don't know what you're doing, this card can be a lot more impactful, and you can really catch people not ready for what you're about to throw down. 2 wheels, Wheel and Windfall. Again, this is a Breach deck, no Time Twister here, and we're trying to just jam. Ephemerate, very notable. 1, just kind of good in these creature ETB world that we're in, but we do have the line with Final Fortune here to go Spellseeker, get Ephemerate, Ephemerate, Spellseeker, get Final Fortune, start, Spellseeker, Ephemerate, do the whole thing, Enlighten Tutor, get your Underworld Breach, then you get Brain Freeze. So the whole line you can do with Spellseeker. It's kind of pip intensive. It's a little flexible in that if you have a piece or 2, it gets a little bit easier. A card that probably could just see more play. Ephemerate on your Dockside can just be cracked anyways, and you can save combo pieces. Like someone goes to kill your meal, you can Ephemerate it. Worm's Chant, card I'm a fan of. I jammed it into my blue farm at Cookout. It's really good sometimes. Sometimes silencing one person is enough. A lot of tables, you kind of get a feeling that, you know, 2 people are out of the game and then, you know, maybe one person has some interaction for what you want to do. Sometimes Worm's Chant gets you there. Again, you can kind of tell there's a less grindy slant here because we don't see mana drain, which was like kind of a staple in these colors. But 2 mana interaction to protect your win attempt kind of sucks versus holding up 2 mana to mana drain, stop their thing, and then develop your 1 ring or something. Easier to defend and makes more sense. We are on Grinding Station. We're really jamming lots of abilities to lots of potential to win here that like loops together pretty well. Enchantment slot, we have Dress Down, pretty nice, and Touch the Spirit Realm. I always like to see this one. 25 lands, a little low on the land count. Again, no Cradle. We do have the double soul lands here. That's about it that I point out here. But again, this is a deck that's trying to force the issue more than it is sit back and make its land drop, so a lower land count makes sense. We got Connor on not Dargo, moved over to Rogsai. Connor, great turbo / proactive aggressive deck pilot that we've seen in a bunch of top 16s and top 4s, but here rocking a pretty standard Rog list. So Rogsai has roughly 2 to 3 slots that are kind of up to your discretion. The lists that tend to top 16 and top 4 are pretty locked in to kind of save time, so we can look at some of the lists that have more going on. We have the same 6 creatures that pretty much every Rog list is on. This is pretty locked in. In terms of sorceries, we do have both of the sorcery speed Final Fortune effects. We have Grim Tutor, which not every list is on. A lot of them are still on. Now the Rogsai lists now are built for more of the payoffs than they are just like, oh, we need to get our mana values as low as possible for Nas, because we're not even really a Nas deck anymore. Like we run it. Alana talked about this on Playing with Power and she put it really well. We're really just trying to get to whatever the thing is that's best in any scenario. And it's usually not Nas. We're usually on the Rhystic Misty game plan, we're on the Necro game plan, we're on the Breach game plan, we're on the Thoracle game plan, and then Nas is just, it's a way you can spend 5 mana to win, but it's not the way you have to win. Certainly not anymore. So pretty standard here. Is on Beseech. Beseech is lined up really well for this deck, even though we don't have a lot of material to bargain sometimes. Born Upon Wind is one of... This is like one of the most insane cards this deck has got. Born Upon Wind Necro is straight up like the most powerful way to win right now. Probably better than Nas. Daze is a slot that is questioned a bit. The One Ring is a card that comes in and out of list. Conqueror's Flail and Grinding Station as well. So no ring here, but we do have the Flail and we do have Grinding Station. So we got our ability to Grand Abolisher and we have our other way to win with Underworld Breach. And then no Dress Down. So we do not see the Dress Down. I think a lot of the Rog pilots are not really liking how that card is lining up. If you're not expecting a lot of creature stacks, it doesn't do that much. Or you can use it reactively sometimes, but we're not really trying to do that. And then also, usually you're going to have to, if you're trying to win with like Thoracle, you're going to have to get rid of yours. So like, it can just line up awkwardly. So that's when we've seen like get swapped out for Daze, for instance. Like that's been an easy swap for a lot of people. Slight deviation from like some lists that you might see, but for the most part, a pretty set in stone kind of standard Rog list. piloted to a top 16 finish. Here we have friend of the channel, FreedomWaffle. Still on Tymna Kraum. I understand. He felt he needed to do it. I get it. Let's see what's different on this blue farm list. 14 creatures, no Saracen. We are on Boromir, which I do think is really good. This card has no king making on accident sort of potential that Lavinia does. You can sack it if you need to. Everything it does is really good. It's a 3/3 with vigilance. It does, I would say, the more relevant thing that Lavinia does, which is the pseudo Grand Abolisher, stop the free interaction thing, but then you can sack it. Make your creatures indestructible if that's what you need. And also you can just sack it and allow your opponents to do their free interaction, which is super nice. We've got the Fimage, we've got the Metamorph. Nothing really to say about the creature package other than the Boromir. Reanimate, this is something we saw again on some of the Mox Masters lists. This lets you do things like in your own list, bring back Fimage, Ranger Captain, Boromir, or just some of your stuff that's died. Like if you're Bowmaster, got Bowmastered, stuff like that. And then also just, I can bring back my Dockside. I can bring back your Dockside. We saw there were a lot of plays this weekend of people setting up things in their graveyard and then getting blown out with Reanimate. And just in general, 1 mana, bring back anything from a graveyard. Stuff is going to end up in the graveyard. It's just going to happen, whether it's discarded or sacrificed or whatever, just destroyed. I'd be interested to hear from some of the Blue Farm pilots how they've liked this card, what it's been for mainly, what they've really used it for. The idea of it makes a lot of sense to me. We have Path to Exile, so instead of going up on like something like the Ormshant that we saw in the last list, we have 1 extra piece of hard removal. Again, Born Upon a Win. I know Freedom did a play this weekend where he was able to just hold up mana. Somebody was going for something and then he was just able to Born Upon a Win Dockside in response and just go crazy. I noticed after recording this, there's no demonic consultation. So it looks like Freedom is opting not to run a card that's kind of rough to cast on its own. And is also cutting the most efficient combo in the entire format. No ring here, and again, like I said, no Talion, not the super grindy Blue Farm Slant. No Dress Down, no Touch the Spirit Realm, just the 3 must-run enchantments here, and then 28 lands, 1 soul land. Is running Forbidden Orchard, which can be a little awkward with Tymna decks, and is running Spire of Industry. Comes in and out of some lists, but good stuff to FreedomWaffle. Good, mainly proactive slant of Blue Farm that, of course, can just grind out cards if it needs to. All right, and we have one of my favorites, at least, the Thrasios Vial, like really kind of stormy list. So again, we're not going all in on the Thrasios plan. We do have Dockside Temur Sabertooth to be able to do that, and we have Kinnan Basalt Monolith to be able to do that. Basically, you're running 2 good cards in your list, and then you kind of take the hit. You take the L on running Sabertooth and then Basalt Monolith, just to be able to have that potential to just like slam down especially with Sabertooth, just a pure creature win con. We also have Mayhem Devil here, which is pretty sick. This card can really take over games with Dockside. Fetch lands being so abundant in this format. Also enables you to win with Dockside loops even when your commanders are shut off, like if there's a Drannith or something. So that's pretty cool. Pretty standard sorcery package. We again have the 2 wheels here, kind of the 2 better ones if you're wanting to do breach stuff. Reanimate, powerful utility. You have a creature package of stuff that is likely to die, especially in a Bowmaster world. Getting to bring it back, do it again. Culling Ritual, this is the first list we've seen that can run it, and it does because this card is broken. We have Born Upon a Wind, and this is the first like 4-color pile that we're seeing that also is running Necropotence. If I was running Blue Farm right now, I'd probably be trying Necro and Born Upon a Wind just to see how it feels, and just because like these cards just win the game. They're just so broken. Artifact package, we of course have LED because we're a breach deck. We have Defense Grid because, like I said, we don't get silences, we don't get Grand Abolishers over here. And then we do have the Basalt, and we do have the 1 ring. Again, I don't think the 1 ring is so bad on your Nas that it's not worth running. If you think the card is coming down at a relevant point in the game in your matches, then I think it's worth considering. And then again, like I said, that enchantment package, it's the must runs and the Necro, which I think is approaching a must run. I'd be curious to see how we see Necro develop in blue decks, especially blue-red decks that get to do Necro, Born, and Final Fortune. That having that extra payoff for like I can Necro especially hard because I have the ability to cast Born and or Final Fortune is so much better. It's so ridiculous. Yeah, nothing else really sticking out to me. Again, this one isn't the not on Beseech the Mirror, different than like the list we covered at the last Mox Masters Invitational, and no Song of Creation, which I do kind of hate to see because that card is so cool. But again, if you don't like the Beseech and you're not trying to do wild Song creation stuff, I get it. All right, and here we have Mardu Dargo, Tymna Dargo. Already seen a little bit of something interesting. Omnixus the Adversary. This is a cool one because it lines up really well with Dargo. If you cast this with a Dargo, you make the 1 Omnixus, and then the copy, if you casualty on Dargo, will come in with 7 loyalty, and you can draw 7 cards and lose 7 life. Pretty nice. Creature package is kind of what you expect. expect with the Mardu list. We have some amount of Tymna attackers. We're not going overly hard into like the Saracens and stuff like that. We have cards that are just pretty good with what we're doing. Goblin Engineer, we'll go over that, why that's in here. Lotho, Magda, which can be pretty sick with these lists because there's a lot of cool targets you can get. Bergi, Imperial Recruiter, Dualcaster Majoron, Dualcaster Twin Flame, Mayhem Devil, Ruthless Technomancer. These, if you're not familiar with Ruthless Technomancer, one, again, pretty good with Dargo. When this enters, you sacrifice a creature and you make treasures equal to its power. So this enters, sacrifice Dargo, make 7 treasures, pay a treasure, recast Dargo. Notably, what this card can do with Mayhem Devil, you've seen this in like decks like Corval do this too. You can loop it with Dockside and Mayhem Devil to Ruthless Technomancer lets you return a card from your graveyard. So if you're able to net enough treasures, you can stack some treasures, ping your Dockside, use the mana that you have, use Ruthless Technomancer, return Dockside, comes back into play, net more treasures. You're pinging people down as you go with the Mayhem Devil, and then the Mayhem Devil is killing your Dockside to let you keep going with Technomancer. It also lines up really well because Technomancer is not non-token. If you get a big Bowmaster, you know, you do like the Bowmaster wheel, Ruthless Technomancer comes in, boom, I get the 21, 28, whatever million treasures that Bowmasters get, and you can probably figure something out from there. Again, Reanimate, the Mardu lists have been doing Reanimate stuff way more, you know, like more regularly than, or for longer time than, you know, the Blue Farm list. Okay, so I guess I misspoke earlier. We don't have Twin Flame, we have Heat Shimmer, which is better. So like one weakness of Dualcaster Twin Flame is you need another creature in play. Heat Shimmer doesn't have that weakness, it costs 1 more, but it lets you put a token of somebody else's creature in play. It can be better just to get their stuff, but is also just, you don't need anything in play to be able to do Heat Shimmer Dualcaster. You do need a different creature in play to be able to do Dualcaster Twin Flame. Seize the Spotlight. This is a pretty interesting one that you might know from casual. Each opponent chooses Fame or Fortune. For each player who chose Fame, you gain control of a creature they control till end of turn. Untap those creatures, they gain haste. For each player who chose Fortune, you draw a card and create a treasure. This is really good when people have very impactful creatures on board. The downside of this card is even if they don't have creatures, they can choose Fame and then you just don't get anything. But you're making your opponent choose between just give me your stuff or let me draw cards and make treasures. And you might think like, oh, giving your stuff for a turn, not that big of a deal. We're playing Dargo, baby. We can sack those creatures easy. Easy clap. They're gone. And then we can reanimate them. We're popping off. We are on Purity of the Abyss. We don't care. We're balling. Burn Offering, again, great Dargo card. March of Otherworldly Light, removal that a lot of the Mardu decks are working with. Sacrifice again, lines up really well with Dargo. And we are, of course, an Ad Nauseam deck. We're trying to jam. We have Alter Dementia, which works really well with Dargo. You get to just mill 7 cards. Spoiler alert, we're on Underworld Breach. So there's a lot of stuff you can do with like Alter Dementia and Breach and LED and Dargo and just go crazy and mill your entire library and do whatever you want. Cursed Mirror, cool card that we've seen in like 3 color red decks that don't have access to blue mainly as like one of their, just a really powerful clone. It can sometimes be one of the better ones to do. We are on the Ring and we are in Citadel. We're just balling out. We don't care about our life total. This is a super cool list. We do have Smothering Tithe as well. Lots of layered combo stuff, really low land count. We're just jamming win attempts. We have so many overlapping synergies where some of the stuff, like our card quality might not look that insane, but we just get so many overlapping things. Like, you know, we're all in on the like treasure Dockside loops. Then we also have Bolus of Citadel that we can go grab with Magda. Really cool list. Yeah, if you've never tried a Dargo list or Tymna Dargo or a Mardu list, definitely think about giving this one a try. It's really cool. Next up, we have another Rograkh list. Tell you what, let's just make this a little easier on ourselves and use Moxfield's awesome compare feature to see what is different with this list than our previous one. Go to more, compare. We're going to paste in the last Rograkh list we covered and hit compare and see what's different. Literally nothing. These are the same lists. That should save me some time. We have 2 identical Rograkh lists. So I'm glad to see 2 Rograkhs. And also we got a nice little break here. I got a nice little, you know, just look at the cards. They're cool. There's nothing different. Just rewatch that last part. It's the same list. Cool. I like it. I liked it before. I liked it now. Next up, we've got the one Najeela by Matthew Brady 20. Matthew Brady, fan of the channel, super cool dude. Met him at Cookout, met him at Top Deck Expo as well. Big shout outs to Matt, super cool dude. Let's see what we're doing. What kind of Najeela is this? We've got the one dork, interesting, just one. Esper, Ragavan, so most staples, Tinderwall, they're pretty much all on that. We've got Fimage, no Flesh Duplicate or Metamorph. This is looking like a no bad card slant. We have just the Grim Hireling. We have Grim Hireling, Derevi, Samut. I was talking to Matt during the tournament and he was talking about how a lot of times, again, like a lot of Najeela pilots, you develop Najeela and people have to fear it and they respect it and they have to remove it and use their stuff on it. A lot of times you don't even care about that. Najeela, she's just there and then you just win with ad nauseam or something. Culling Ritual, one of the best cards in the deck, period. The one wheel, just the one red blast, the one silence. We do have the Vial, still racking that here. No Legolas's quick reflexes, nonsense, stuff like that. Brain Freeze Intuition, this is a 5-color breach deck. We are on the ring here. Decently notable, there's been some testing in these slots. Again, the ring, especially in more turbo-oriented decks, still kind of up in the air whether or not you should or shouldn't be running it. The one time I saw it this weekend, it was cracked. I got it turn 1 and it was just carried me super hard. Got the Touch the Spirit Realm, I think a pretty normal mana base. We do have Forbidden Orchard, which again can kind of suck in Najeela sometimes, but having a density of 5-color lands is really helpful, especially when you're doing Derevi stuff and of course your 5-color deck. So yeah, kind of what you'd expect for a like no bad cards, turbo, whatever Najeela list. We do have the ring. We got a couple cards that are, again, we're still developing in the post Lord of the Rings meta. There are a lot of cards that shook it up. We don't see, for instance here, Born Upon a Wind. No Necropotence, which is a thing like players like Memo of Tribe. A lot of the other standard stuff. All right, and we did get Talion, the Kindly Lord. We did get a Talion up here. Karn, a card that a lot of the control style decks or decks that call themselves control, however you want to put it, are on. This card is a house, honestly. If you had to resolve this, you know, I've played it in Kinnan, playing like Wounded's version of Kinnan. It does feel really ridiculous. Creature package, we're not going absurd on the clones here. We're going pretty modest. We've got Sakashima to be able to enter as a Talion if we want it, because it changes its name. We got Phyrexian Metamorph, which isn't going to be able to enter as a Talion, but can enter somebody's Dockside, stuff like that. Subtlety, another card that's like, it goes way up in stocks if you're a low color blue deck, and also you are drawing a lot of cards, which the Talion decks tend to do. Thoracle, Shieldred, I've heard really good things about Shieldred, especially this meta. There were more Mystics and Mystics here than I've ever seen in my life, and no man should have to ever see. Hullbreaker Horror, you don't have a way to win with Hullbreaker Infinite stuff with Talion. That doesn't really do anything, but this card is a warping thing. Being able to flash it into play, like once it's in play, it just kind of get to do whatever you want. You just start casting spells, bouncing things. Your counter spells are like double counter spells now. Sorcery slots, Toxic Deluge. No Yeheni, I think it's Yeheni's Expertise is a card that I've seen in some of them. None of that here. Deluge on 3, keeping your Talion usually is fine. The Twister, you don't really want to Windfall. You don't want to, you know, be feeding the breach players. It is a Nombo with Mnemonic Betrayal, but like the graveyard will get full again. You're fine. And then a pretty dense interaction suite. So we got Pact Offer, Dispel, Flusterstorm, Mental Misstep, Pongify's Removal, Spell Pierce, Spell Snare, Stern Scolding. Really good if you're scared of Docksides. Liliana's Triumph, making people sacrifice creatures. Sheoldred's Edict, kind of underplayed. Trick Bind. So much interaction. Winds of Rebuke, still very much having a lot of ability to interact. I would say generally still leaning broad. Not too many that are so narrow that you just are hoping you draw so many cards that you're going to work. I would say for the most part, like a lot of win attempts or really relevant plays are going to get stopped or messed with by a lot of these at least. We have the Grafdigger's Cage. This deck loves this card. Cursed Totem again, loves it. Imposter Mech. This is the first deck we've seen today with that in here. So it's able to do the Imposter Mech copy. Again, can be a Dockside, can be a Bowmaster, which is really cracked. Oh, also notable, no ad nauseum here. This is not an Oz deck. Wonder how often Moxhammer's turned on. I know they're pretty dedicated on getting the Talion out, but I wonder how often, what the average turn like Talion comes down is. We do have Bloodchief Ascension. We're not on the Mind Crank, I think is the card, the artifact. So that's not here. Bloodchief Ascension though just can be a win con anyways. Like, so one, people are just going to be losing a lot of life to Talion. Cards get into graveyards a lot and you have Talion triggers, or you have Bloodchief Ascension triggers. And then this card along with like it makes Breach impossible because they start brain freezing and then they're going to die. When you Mean Betrayal, you're going to exile everybody's graveyard and then they're all going to go back to their graveyard in a turn, and that can just kill. That could just be a win con as cast Mnemonic Betrayal pass. Black Market Connections, pretty cool one. Lets you see more cards, more mana. Your life total is probably going to be one of the less pressured one at the table, so you can spend life into this. Notable, if you're thinking about jamming this card, you must choose at least one of these options. So you got to keep that in mind when you're thinking about your life total and how deep you want to go this turn, and knowing that you're going to take at least one on your following turn. 28 lands. We have a lot of the like utility lands. This is still a Tanya Pack mana base, of course. Pretty cool stuff. Cool. And it didn't just draw its way up to here. It got 3 wins. What was that? 2 losses, 3 draws. It was able to jam wins and get there. It wasn't just sitting back and countering things until the clock ran out. So pretty sick. All right, next up, we've got Wounded Satellite, friend of the channel, Max, super cool dude, playing his famous Kinnan Grind Them into Dust list. Let's see what we've got. Let's see if there's any notable changes since we've last covered it. So Flesh Duplicate was a big upgrade that Kinnan got in Doctor Who. This card is so much better than Fimage in this list. It's not even close. You could also run Fimage. here Max opted not to, but Flesh Duplicate, so much better. Lines up so well with your Hullbreaker and Tidespout Tyrant stuff. He's still on Armored Scrap Gorger. This is one that some of the Kinnan lists run, some don't. It's a 2-mana dork, but it also, when it becomes tapped, you exile something from a graveyard. It looks pretty standard. We do have the Endurance, so you got to be careful with this one because if you cast this spell, you will lose the game. I don't know why that is, but that just seems to be how it works. Crop Rotation, this is a Gaia's Cradle deck. We'll get to some of the utility lands towards the end, but this card does have some flexibility. So this is a new inclusion, I know, Trinisphere, relatively new. This card doesn't really infect Kinnan too much. I'd be curious to know how it performed this weekend, if you saw it at all. You can tutor for it if you need to with some of your other artifact tutors. But yeah, it's kind of just a one-sided stacks piece in this list because of how much mana Kinnan can make. It is a card that I think if you don't have a lot of experience, you need to be careful of because you can just throw the game. If you play this at the wrong point, not that this is going to be an issue that like, you know, someone like Max is going to do, but you got to watch out for it if you're just jamming this list and putting it together for the first time because you might just shut off somebody's free interaction. And then if there's another deck that can really play through Trinisphere, then you got to be careful. Just Rhystic and Mystic, we're keeping it simple. No Sylvan Library, none of that other nonsense. Cradle, you can tutor for. We have Homeward Path that you can get with that Crop Rot. Manamo, which is super mondo duper busted with the One Ring, especially with Seedborn Muse. Treasure Vault is a outlet for your Basalt mana to turn into colored mana to be able to win with Kinnan. So the Crop Rotation does have a lot of different, also Merchant Zone and Cephalid Coliseum. So like a lot of different utility that you can go get. It's not just Crop Rot for Cradle. That one's probably pretty common, but you do have a lot of notable ones. If you want to do like the Homeward Path sort of lock-ish thing you can do with Perplexing Chimera. Super cool list. Glad to see Max got there. I know he was hoping for a top 4 or a win, but don't beat yourself up. I'm sure you played great. Awesome performance. Super cool dude. Cool deck list. Peter Cepynsky's Niv-Mizzet. What do we got? Dockside. It's like the main card in this deck, right? We have Nezahal. This has kind of been a staple for this deck for the past bit, at least for most of this year, I think. As just like another payoff that's like kind of similar to Niv. It's usually easier to cast, even though it costs more mana. So Displacer Kitten actually doesn't have a lot of great targets in this list. Dockside, of course, is a really good one. You can also use it to protect your Nezahal or your Niv-Mizzet. It's already hard enough to kill Niv-Mizzet, and if people are casting things and drawing you cards, and when you cast the thing, you flicker your Niv-Mizzet. Probably pretty impossible to kill Niv-Mizzet in that point. Spellsky, again, mainly here to protect your Niv. This deck is trying to get through the ridiculous 6 pips that Niv costs. So you have a bunch of ways to mainly tutor for your Dockside. They have a little bit of extra flexibility. You know, Imp Recruiter can get like the Spellsky or Ragavan, but for the most part, it's there to get your Dockside. And then you got the clone effect to do it as well. Do you have Time Twister? It's pretty needed here. A lot of times if you're going to win with the Niv Curiosity stuff, like again, we have Tandem Lookout here to be able to do that. Put it on Niv. First ping you get, boom, you win the game. If your library is big enough for that. And so at a certain point, a lot of times you're going to need to ping like 1 or 2 players to death and then stop the loop and then Time Twister, get your library back in and then ping the other player to death. You can also do this with Valakut Awakening where you draw most of your deck and then you put most of it on the bottom. And then you draw those cards again, and then you kill the person. And then we're gonna have a ton of interaction here because this is what Niv does really, really well. So we got bounce spells, we got counter magic. We do have a blue blast here. We got Hydro Blast, Bolt, Miscast, Mystical Tutor, both the red blast, rapid hybridization, spell pierce, regular old counterspell. That's how deep we're going here. Lots of free or cheap interaction trick to one, keep us alive in the early game while you're developing Niv. You don't have a lot of other stuff going on. A lot of times it's not easy to win without Niv. Actually, almost impossible to win without Niv. Once you get Niv in play, free interaction just becomes busted. Niv triggers off your spells. You cast the thing, you draw a card. They cast the thing, you draw a card. It's absurd. This is an is-it list, but there's no Breach Brain Freeze stuff. Should there be? I don't know. There wasn't one here and they got top 16, so I mean, that's good. Urza Saga here has flexibility in getting Jeweled Lotus and in getting Grafdigger's Cage if you need it. Really cool list. If you haven't played Niv, it's actually a lot of fun, especially once he gets into play. It feels so awesome. Cool to see it get such a high finish here. Next up, we're looking at Jorman's Blue Farm list. So let's see what we got. Boromir. If we do have Dothy, this is the first list we've seen on this so far. Think about the same sorcery package as the last list we looked at. Angel's Grace. Interesting to see this one up here. This card does a couple things. It lets you Naz and draw your entire deck. So that is proactively good. It lets you stop a Thoracle or whatever sort of I win the game effect. And it can't really reasonably be answered having split second. So I'm curious to hear how this performed. This is usually kind of memed on as like a noob trap. This card also can line up well with the Final Fortune that we see here. Lets you take an extra turn kind of for free. So that's pretty nice. Yeah, I'm curious to see how it is. I haven't played with the card. I don't know how long. Certainly not in Blue Farm recently. So I'm curious to see how this did, but maybe just the Nas, the infinite Nas to be able to do what you want. And the Final Fortune stuff is worth it. I know we saw Kai use this card in the Narset list that he top forward with. We do have Stern Scolding here, probably underplayed. I'm glad to see it in 2 lists. This stops pretty much every creature in the format, really. Born Upon a Wind, again, absurd card. Doesn't matter that they're not on Necro. They're not on it, but it doesn't matter really. Is on the Cavern of Souls. So looking back at our creature suite, Cavern of Souls on human gives us Esper Sentinel, Drannith, Grand Abolisher, Tymna, Boromir, Opposition Agent, Ranger Captain, which is a lot. On Rogue, it gives us Stothy and Op Agent. Cool list. I'm curious to see how the Angel's Grace performed. I didn't get to watch any games where I saw it, but maybe if I get a chance to go back and see some of the coverage, then we'll see it there and see how it did. All right, now we are looking at the top 4. Kinnan, Big Flip by Victini. Let's take a look. What's different here? Okay, I already seen a whole, oh man, we might be here for a little bit. We've got Ballista. This is another way to win with Kinnan Basalt. That just, you don't need anything else, you just play the Ballista, boom, you're good. Allosaurus Shepherd, texture green spells. This is a card that was like a really big green staple for a while, and it's just kind of like, well, 1, we just don't see as many green decks, but then 2, sometimes your green cards aren't the ones you really care that much about. Sometimes it's like the blue stuff you want to protect. So Prophet of Distortion, this is another way to win. So like Thrasios, these both just win with Kinnan, infinite colorless mana. Prismite is another way to put mana into a creature to turn into colorless mana, or turn into colored mana rather, and win with Basalt Monolith. We've got Kogla instead of like Thorn Mammoth. We've got Nezahal Coma, which is one that was like a really big staple for Kinnan, and now some lists are on, some lists are off. We've got the Hullbreaker, Tide Spout, Void Winnower. So we have Get Probe as a cantrip that gives you info. Ponder, cantrip that just gives you lots of card selection. We have the Reshape, so you know, maybe we're slanting more towards, I mean, we already have so many more ways to win with Kinnan Basalt. It's looking like we're definitely slanting more towards just like jamming those Basalt Monolith wins. Reshape makes a lot of sense in that world. So we do have Brainstorm, so highly valuing the cantrips, it looks like. We do have the Mystical Tutor. Model to make sure a way to tutor for like your 2-drop that filters your mana, as well as just being interaction. Dress Down and Sylvan coming in. Dress Down is kind of interesting with Kinnan because of course it shuts off all of your stuff. I'm assuming this is like anti-Thoracle, anti-Dockside mainly, and not just like, it's gonna be pretty hard to use this the way like Rockside uses it, right? Where you're just like, let me shut off the creature stacks and then I'll do my win. Less utility land, so this list is opting more to just have their colors than to just try to do a bunch of cute stuff. No Perplexing Chimera here, so none of that Homer Path nonsense. We're just going for it. We're just, this is definitely a more make them have it kind of like, of course you have grind potential and interact. I mean, you have Seaborn Muse, you have Kinnan, Thrasios, no wondering here. So that is a big one that I'm curious about. The ring seems like it's so good in Kinnan. I know Max, when we had him on the podcast, said this is the best ring deck, but no wondering here. I'm curious to hear why that is. I guess if you're not planning to grind, then that makes sense, but like Kinnan just has such natural ability. Maybe they don't feel like they need it. I don't know. Maybe it's win more in their mind. They didn't need it to top 4. That much is apparent. Pretty different Kinnan list also in the top 16. And just for comparison, let's see how many cards different this was. 31 cards different. Both in the top 16, both playing the same commanders. 31 cards different and pretty rare. I mean, some of them are lands, of course, but like lots of creatures, interaction, like whole packages are different. So yeah, good stuff. Is this what you expected? Is this what you wanted? We've got TNT is back, baby. We got Oko, Thief of Crowns. I'm already excited. All right, let's see what we got going on this TNT list, because I actually don't know what brand of TNT this is. Live reaction to Brina the Demagogue? What? Okay, hold on. Okay, so we have Oko, which was a staple for a while, and you know, works in these colors. Sure, it has a lot of utility. Makes sense. Dork package, kind of heavy on it, going like Elves of Deep Shadow. So Collector Roof, okay, notable. We're probably not doing Kinnan Basalt stuff, and of course we don't see the Kinnan here, so that makes sense. So we're leaning kind of stacks. You've got a Gilded Drake. Kite Sail Freebooter. So we got a creature that kind of like a Thoughtseize, Lavinia, Bowmaster, Oracle. We got Derevi here, so I'm assuming we've got like some Derevi, Cradle, Snap, Bloop stuff going on. We have the Subtlety. Okay, so now let's look at some of the. So we've got Brina. If you're not familiar, this is a really popular casual commander. Player attacks one or more of your opponents. If that opponent has more life than your other opponents, that player draws a card and you put counters on your creature. So like this doesn't draw. I mean, it draws you a card. This is a really interesting like casual politics commander. And in here that's like buffing your creatures. I'm wondering if there's some like Agatha Soul Cauldron stuff down below with these counters. Yeah, that's a really interesting one. This creature does get giant really quickly, and we are a Tymna deck, so maybe we're just leaning heavy into that Tymna thing. Let's see, Kitesail Arsonist. I gotta read this one. 3 mana, flying ward 1. When it enters for each player, choose up to one target artifact creature that player controls. So long as it remains. Oh, this is the one that turns. This is kind of like Grasp of Fate, I think it is. That when it enters, you turn 3 things. You basically get rid of 3 things. So like it's a 3-for-1. Turns yourself into treasures as long as this is in play. Pretty cool. And it's also a good Tymna attacker. Okay, I'm really liking what we're working with here. Scheming Symmetry. So this is like something, you know, we usually see like the Mardu decks pull out with Oppo, but can be good. I mean, if it's good there, why not be, you know, could be good here. Green Suns, Eldritch Revolution. God, this art is absurd. Wow, that is, okay. Depth Through. That's interesting. So we can get, oh, Brina's a warlock. What the heck? Not a wizard. Let's just get Derevi. Let's just get Thoracle. Let you bounce 2 creatures, but I think it's mainly there to tutor for 2 different things that can win you the game. No Diabolic Intent. Limdual's Vault, which we've seen a little bit of today. Tiny Pack, Dismember, Mystical Dispute. Okay. That's just 1 mana counter a blue thing, mostly. I mean, paying 3 is a lot. On the Misdirection, we got Snuff Out. So you're heavy on the removal, Force of Vigor, Submerge. So really leaning very interactive. Specific meta calls. Just live trying to figure out what's going on. So Null Rod. So of course, we got Null Rod and Oof. Not going to be a lot of artifacts. Just stuff to help you like power out either those things or something else early, and then you maybe slam down the Oof and Null Rod after. Carpet of Flowers, Stony Silence. So we're going all in on the Oof effects. 3 of them. Rhystic Mystic, Carpet. Makes a lot of sense here. Carpet of Flowers probably underplayed. 29 lands. Anything crazy here? Cradle. Wow, really interesting. So Null Bird Tempo. Clearly the bird is a big part of it. That is really interesting. So you're just stopping your opponents, beating them down, I guess, with Brina or other creatures. There was no Agatha stuff, which makes sense. I should have expected that when there's Collector Oof. I mean, that totally makes sense. Kitesail Larcenist is really cool with the Oofs because they just turn into little artifacts that cannot do anything and have no abilities, can't be activated. Really interesting list. This is, yeah, really cool. Let me know down below what you think about this list. If there's any cards that I should have also talked about, but like super interesting to see this list. Just pure meta buster punishing all the nonsense people are doing. Really interesting. Okay, what a cool list. Speaking of cool lists, we've got Will and Lucas. We don't need Blue Farm. We got Blue Farm or Blue's Clues or whatever this one's called. I think it's Blue's Clues. So these are Blue Farm colors. If you're not familiar with this commander pairing, kind of just run them for the colors. They have things they do. They make you clues. They turn on your Mox Amber and your SWAT and stuff. So you are going to cast these. It's good to have your commander in play in this broken format where you have these free commander spells. You know, Lucas has some stuff they can do. Will has some stuff they can do. Let's see if we see any synergies that pop out. Esper Ragavan, Archivist of Ogma, drawing cards, Flesh Duplicate, Fimage and Duplicate, no Metamorph, Baron Master Wizard. So what we can do here, Baron is usually, you might know it for Dockside combos. What we can do, Dockside counts high enough to do the Baron loop. We can start looping Will, and when Will enters or leaves, each opponent can investigate. If they don't, they lose 1 life. You investigate at least once, and then once for each opponent who does it. So they have to basically just let you investigate over and over and over. You're getting infinite mana because of the Dockside loop, and then you can draw your entire deck or just ping everybody to death if they just decide they're whatever, not going to make you play through it. That's something that you wouldn't see in like Blue Farm, so we do have access to win cons in the zone. Braids, just so you can see what this card does. This is the Japanese version. Yeah, so Braids is a 3-drop. I always keep wanting to play Braids. I want to throw it in like Rogsai and just be able to like sack my Rog and draw 3. Yeah, beginning of your end step, you sacrifice artifact, creature, enchantment, land, or planeswalker. Each opponent can sacrifice a card that shares a type with it, and then for each one that doesn't, they lose 2 and you draw a card. Usually, depending on the type and what people have in play, this is drawing you, you sack a clue, which you're gonna have a bunch of, and then people have to like sack their mana rocks or their clues or their treasures, or if you sack creature, they're gonna have to sack theirs. You're usually gonna draw 2 to 3 cards from this, so this can be a really big value engine payoff for a lot of the stuff that you have. Mayhem Devil, again, you can do Dockside nonsense stuff with this. Hullbreaker Horror also lines up with this infinite thing. If you get to infinitely will, that's going to win you the game. So it is cool to see, they're not just here for the colors. There's other stuff going on. It lets you do different win cons. Yeah, so I'm curious to see what else we're going to have here. Sorcery package, kind of standard. We do have the Diabolic Intent. We got the Beseech, Savine, so I'm assuming we're going to be breaching. We're in the best breach color, so that makes sense. Get Lost. This is a new one. Destroy target creature, Enchantment, Planeswalker, its controller creates 2 map tokens, which are like 1 sack target creature explorers. Just hard removal from most of the things. It being a disenchant, like disenchants aren't that great. 2 mana destroy target creature not that great, but also pretty notably, map tokens are sorcery speed. So you can get lost, get rid of like a heuristic study, and then they make 2 maps, and then your dockside count just went up, and also you're not having to pay for the dockside loop for heuristic. So this is gonna let you win easier in some scenarios, kind of like the synergy that Wishclaw has with dockside loops. So that's pretty cool. Cloudstone Curio, again, another way to loop with the dockside. Relic of Legends, Similar Legends are on. We got these 2, of course, so that works out. We got the Ragavan, we got the Lotho, we got the Braids, and Baron. So a decent amount. It can be a pretty good 3 mana rock. Also, if you're doing some loop stuff, it can help the mana line up there. Usually probably doesn't matter. I'm curious to see how often that does matter, but I don't know. And we are on the ring. We're Nazin, we're ringing. We got the Wishclaw, heuristic. We do have the Blind Obedience again. That lines up pretty well with our dockside loops. People stuff enters tapped, and it just slows people down pretty well. And we are in the Cavernous Souls tech. Both our commanders are humans in this list, so that helps. We have Manamo, which we haven't really seen in a lot of the like blue farm color list, but here taking advantage of the ring, and so like that works with Lucas. You can tap Lucas multiple times, kill creatures or goad them. Really cool list. This is one Eric and I keep talking about as commander pairing that we're interested in, and I really like how this one was constructed. Like it looks really fun to play. Seems like a good Springleaf drum deck, Mox Amber. You're not gonna have as much draw power in the zone, but you have like way more ability to win. You're kind of lower to the ground than a lot of the blue farm lists. Yeah, really awesome list. Big props for second place at this huge event. Really cool. Let's snap back to reality though. Tier 2 deck doesn't win tournaments by Doom DG. This is what won the tournament. We're looking at blue farm again. Let's see what notable cards we have in this version of the list. Fairy Mastermind, only creature here. That's that notable Boromir. We got the double clones that we talked about. Pretty standard stuff so far. Reanimate. Okay. Again, becoming standard. Got Diabolic Intent, single wheel, typical stuff we've seen. Instant package. We have Path to Exile still here. Fire Covenant, which we were seeing more of earlier this year in blue farm lists, is here now. No Deluge, so opting for this over that. I mean, we're on Mox Amber, which not a lot of the blue farm decks are, but we are on here. I think some decks are just realizing like we could probably just play Mox Amber. I mean, this is just kind of like an amalgamation of the other blue farm lists. I mean, we saw so Fairy Mastermind as a notable card, the other ones weren't on, and then Fire Covenant. I don't know if those cards just came up and were significant. Not doing any of the other enchantment stuff. Is on the Cavernous Souls tech, Forbidden Orchard, Spire, so a lot of those 5-color lands. Sort of cementing, I guess, you know, kind of the new standard for blue farm lists. We've changed a couple cards. We're on the Born Upon a Winds, we're on the Boromirs and the double clones. Really awesome tournament. Again, look forward to our podcast breakdown on the event, how it was on the ground, what it was like being there, how it ran, all that good stuff. Let me know down below what deck was your favorite, which of these decks you want to try out. What are you thinking about playing in the next tournament that you are rocking if you are? And if you're not rocking a tournament, why not? Let me know down below. cEDH is awesome. You're awesome. This event was awesome. These decks were awesome. I'm thinking about putting that Blues Clues list together. All that being said, thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you next time.